Chapter 11. Growing Up Fast. Dury Gates had been the meeting point the previous Sunday, and most of the regulars turned up, as there was no game on and time was their own. Chatting like a haggard of sparrows, they whipped off their surplus clothes and hid them in the outhouse at the back of Dury Hall until they were coming back. It was a beautiful day, with the sun beating down on them as they dallied along the laneway that led to the back of Carrickmont and into Clonfide. Someone spotted a lone walker ahead who appeared to be looking for birds' nests or something. "It's Annabel," Kate whispered, as she was the first to identify her. "Ask her to join us, Kate," Seamie whispered as they quickened their pace to join her. "Hi, Annabel. Would you like to join us?" "All right, but I can't stay too long because my father will be collecting me later. He's over checking marings or something with Pat Farrell," she added as she fell in with the group. It didn't take long to become acquainted, as they mingled along as naturally as a flock of starlings. Her natural reserve soon gave way to uninhibited joy as the excitement of the new group of friends swept her along like a leaf on a stream. The Clonfide River temporarily checked their progress as they sought a safe waiting point, or better still, a jumping point. Her local knowledge soon brought them to Gandley's, where the river deepened and narrowed through a small ravine cut through a series of rocks. It was perfect for the challenge needed to make a day memorable. The older lads would check the distances first, and then showboat as a sign of their march to manhood. Allowances were made for the girls, of course, and a helping hand proffered if it was obvious the challenge was too great or too risky. But it was also a time for them to show their pluck and fitness. Safely over with the lads, Seamie turned round to encourage Annabel. Not waiting to be asked, she stepped back a few paces, struck the pose of an Olympic athlete for the gas of it, and took off with her short skirt flying and her pink knickers flashing like a lighthouse. A hush fell as she almost made it. Though a valiant effort, her momentum was not enough to take her all the way across. Seamie, who was holding on to an overhanging branch, grabbed her outstretched arm and pulled for all his might. Her sheer devilry and his heroics brought shrieks of laughter as the weight of the two proved too much for the sapling, which bent under their combined weight and left them in the middle of the river with a mighty splash. Spluttering and splattering and splashing, they rose to the surface, still holding on to each other. Striking out for all his might, he held on to her as they kicked hard for the bank. Devil may care now, they struck out together, knowing they were safe. A reluctant hero, the long-armed bullwire was leaning out with one leg wrapped around a sound stump of an ash to pull the pair to safety. Strong as a bull, he was nevertheless wary of water, since he had been accidentally pushed into the deep end of the dam the previous summer. Some of the Allicadoos, jealous of his height and strength, used to rib him about being afraid to wash his teeth in case he drowned, and then run in case he took offence. But he never did. Not being the warring type, he could take a joke as well as give one. Playing cowboys and Indians shortly afterwards, his brother nearly took Seamie's eye with an improvised arrow, but having good bone structure, the arrow skidded past with minimal damage. Roughing up the brother for effect, Bullwire drew up a code of contact and was sheriff-like in maintaining it, especially if the rough and tumbled tended to get out of hand. A shout, or even a dirty look, was enough to keep order, as he often refereed the crossroad derbies where the girls could tackle as hard as the boys, and even harder in a clinch in the haggard afterwards as dusk descended. Back at the river, with heart beating a mile a minute, Seamie could only apologise for failing her. Though somewhat bemused, she threw her arms around him and kissed him full on the lips. He is astonished. He asked what that was for. "For giving me the thrill of my life," she replied. "The others might have thought I was too big for my boots, but we're all the same now," she smiled. Bulwire had retreated to allow some privacy and to keep the others at bay while they were organising themselves. Very different, he thought, as they squeezed dry their clothes in the sanctuary of the thicket alongside the river. Not that it was a big job, because, being a beautiful summer's day, they were wearing the absolute minimum, much less than their parents would approve of if they could only see them. As she stood wide-legged in front of him, he couldn't help but notice her firm breasts through her wet T-shirt. She noticed, he noticed, and without warning took his hands and placed them firmly on them. A shock like that of an electric fence passed through him, almost bowling him over, but the fact that it didn't was due to another picture flashing through his brain just then. An image of an incident the previous summer burst through his consciousness, saving his composure and his blushes. Laughing gaily as they crossed Mullen's Field on a glorious summer evening, the three friends, Carol, June and himself, were delighted to be away from the rest of the gang, who used to follow them like Christ's disciples. It had taken a lot of subterfuge to shake off a battery of suitors led by Bulwire, but by pretending to meet them at Costello's River later, they managed to give them the slip and the dam on Tess's River all to themselves. He vividly remembered June asking him to tie back the top of her bikini prior to a swim, and the way the two of them laughed when she deliberately let it fall. Embarrassed at first, he threw caution to the wind as she turned and gave him a full frontal. He was sure it was Tess who had prepared him for this moment, and smiled as June dared him to go naked. Discarding the top of her colourful bra, she prepared to dive in. Without a second thought, he launched himself from the high bank in his birthday suit. She was beside him in a flash, with Carl immediately afterwards. Though done in fun, it was enough to wise him up, and stood to him now as this new challenge tested his resolve. They melted into each other as naturally as two ice creams on a sunny day. Bulwire shouting, "Come on, you two! What are you up to?" dragged them apart for now, but both knew it was only a matter of time until they bonded again. The flames had been lit, and it would take many moons and fierce tempests to drive them apart again. The job wasn't finished, though. The other girls were not quite as feisty and were anxiously awaiting developments on the opposite bank. Bulwire had everything under control by now, and his long reach made it much easier for the others to cross. Safely over and high on the adrenaline flow, they were chatting like a haggard of sparrows as they milled around Annabel. Her courage and bravado had endeared her to all, placing her at the top of the pecking order with Kate, a task that would normally take ages to achieve. Rarely apart after that, she became the heroine of their many escapades as they wandered far and wide in search of adventure and experience. The experience they sought was that of maturity, which didn't come easy. The church forbade that knowledge except to the chosen few. Tess had other ideas, though. Wise to the ways of the world, and wiser still to the laws of nature, she used her knowledge of life to protect her protégés. Though it was early days, and she hadn't as yet met Annabel, she kept a close eye on Seamie as he grew closer and closer. She knew it wouldn't be long until their exploration of the countryside turned to exploring their own intimacy. Ready for that too, she wasted no time in filling them in on how to enjoy their youth without the fear of being destroyed by it.